Texas midwife is targeted by Texas vigilante Ken Paxton. But is it a diversion from his nefarious plan to end abortion nationwide?
Magic 8 Ball says probably. Plus, a new study shows in post-Roe America, people are fleeing and refusing to take jobs in states with abortion bans.
Joining us to break down the deets of this study is one of the authors. From Institute of Women's Policy Research, Dr. Jamila Taylor is here.
And one of our favorite creative multi-hyphenates, Jean Grae, is back to discuss her freshly released memoir, In My Remaining Years. All this coming up on this episode of the Feminist Buzzkills podcast, the show that still shares the same water fountain.
I don't know. Wait till we get that government contract, Liz.
Wait, you're black. No idea. I'm Liz Winston, and I'm joined by my co-host, the Black Moji Alamodale.
Always black, always forever. And I am so excited to talk about all the stuff we billboarded. But first, I really want to hear about this lady magician you saw in New York recently.
I know. Before we go, let me tell you what, I'm obsessed. So this woman, her name is Belinda Sinclair, and she is like one of the top female magicians in the world.
Okay.
And she's a friend of an old friend of mine. And she has this like mystical apartment in New York in the 40s on this street that's kind of full of like women and lore and witchy things. And it's really great. And she calls it the Conjuring Room. And it's full of like scarves and like cool old books about magic and candles. And it's everything that you want in like a witchy magic experience.
It's like a witch's tent in an apartment.
Yes. It's like a witch's tent in an apartment. And she's like perfect. She's like long hair and just flowy. And she does really cool magic tricks while talking about like, what is magic? You know, what do we believe? How are we fooled? What is real? And then she kind of tells the history of magic and how, like everything else, women, you know, were actually the people who brought magic to the forefront.
Like everything else.
Like everything else, while doing really cool magic tricks. And then she explains some of it, like how she was manipulating you the whole time and you didn't know it. It felt very much of the moment. Like, I feel like that's how the Trump people are. You know, it's like you don't even know what's happening before you know it. But it's only 13 people in a room. And it's like a really fun outing for like a gang of women and femmes who just, you know, want to get together, who kind of like spooky season and witchy magic stuff.
That's very me.
Yes. And it's just very feministy and empowering. It's kind of woo-woo, but I just loved it. And so if you want to go to like that, get some friends together and you're in New York and go, you can go to theconjuringroom.com and you can read all about Belinda. The New York Times did a big article on her and stuff. It's very, very fun.
Just sounds like a whole lot of fun. Like, I don't know, you don't really get to see magic, and you really don't get to see, and I hate to give this to it, but like lady magic, like you always see some weird dude when you see magic.
Yeah, I know. And it's one of those things where I'd love to talk about like some of the magic stuff she did, but I don't want to give it away for people. It's incredible. It's really incredible. I will tell you this one thing. She asked me to conjure somebody I love, and my sister Mary passed away 5 years ago. And so we conjured Mary, and like this flame thing like ignited in her apartment.
Oh my God, I'm like getting goosebumps as you're telling that story.
Yeah, it was wild. So highly recommend it. Theconjuringroom.com. We'll put it in the show notes. You can read all about Belinda. Like, we need all the witchy magic we can get right now.
We need witchy magic. Also, we need places to go that are not full of people who are visiting from other places. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
100%. 100%.
So that sounds like the kind of cool spooky that I can get into rather than the, anti-abortion horoscope that our callers are scared of. So let's get to our next segment, Liz.
Yeah, let's do it. What are you scared of? We got people calling and texting in, sort of assessing the reproductive landscape and asking, should I be scared? Is this a fluke? Help. Really?
Can I call Belinda?
Can I call Belinda? Well, until you go to Belinda, you got to call us first. So let's get to this week's question.
Hi. My name is Rose, and I'm calling from Flagstaff, Arizona. I have a friend that's undocumented, and I was wondering if I can safely take her to a clinic without her risking deportation and without me having problems of my own. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. Bye.
Wow, that's a tough one. Oh my gosh. Just again, being a brown person or being an undocumented person, it's just a risky place to be in this country right now. Currently in Arizona, only the Arizona Department of Corrections, the Mesa Police Department, and 3 county sheriffs, La Paz, Yavapai, and Pinal, have 287 jail enforcement agreements with federal officials. And Flagstaff is not on that list. So a tiny bit of good news there.
Yeah, that is good. But the only abortion clinic in Flagstaff is a Planned Parenthood. And I think they only do medication abortion up to 11 weeks of pregnancy. So I don't know how far along your friend is. Depending on that, you might have to travel out of Flagstaff. But most of the clinics in Arizona are in Maricopa County, which does not have an agreement with the feds. I mean, I'm not an expert on local police and how they're behaving in general because right now everybody's wilding, but I do know that you would be okay in Arizona. So when it comes to accessing abortion safely, again, it kind of depends on how far along someone is, access to travel, etc. If your friend is farther along, you might have to go to Colorado. And reminder that there are checkpoints not just at the border, but throughout the US. And Border Patrol and ICE are really cracking down on anybody brown. So, I mean, it's not scary.
And, there's always self-managed abortion and abortion pills, but in Arizona, the state law mandates that medication abortions have to be acquired, prescribed, and dispensed in person by a physician. So that's not a legal option in Arizona. And depending on how far along your friend is, you should just contact the resources that exist there in Arizona that could listen to you and your friend's specific concerns and address them, knowing what is happening in Arizona specifically. 2 of them are the Abortion Fund of Arizona, and Plan C Pills is always a good resource. And of course, aidaccess.org. We love them. And that's another great place to find out about how to get pills.
That's right. And I would also say there's an organization called If, When, How. That's a legal organization. I would make some calls before you bring your friend. Ask them safely what they think you should do before you go to a clinic or go someplace. Get the lay of the land from some of these orgs as well, just to keep yourself safe. So this is a tricky one, Moj. How would you rank Rose's concern on a scale of 1 to 5?
The 5 alarm fire.
5 alarm fire. Yeah.
The 5 alarm fire. This is deeply concerning, and you should really talk to experts, people that you can trust, like If and How, legal organizations that have your best interests in heart, and make careful decisions. And wishing you the best of luck. What do you think, Liz?
I think the same. I think that I don't want to frighten you out of helping your friend or frighten your friend. I think that if you do some research with these places we suggested, and we put all of those in the show notes for you, they'll help you access and navigate care in the best way and the safest way possible for you and your friend. It's just so bad and racist and horrible out there that I want people to be so extra cautious. So yeah, I'm with you, 5.
Absolutely. And if you, other listeners, want your concerns about the state of abortion access and repro health addressed, please call or text 201-574-7402. You can leave your first name, your city, and then fire away. Ask us your question. Liz and I will get to as many questions as we can. And again, we will have the number in the show notes.
That's right. So we're here to help any way we can. Oh, those were hard ones. I hope we helped.
Ooh.
I know.
Also, hearing about people's pain is just, this is the work that we've chosen, and I'm glad that we are here to do it. But it really is heartbreaking to know that people have to go through this for basic health care.
I'm just glad we can do it.
Yeah.
I'm glad we have the information to be able to give to people.
Yeah, agreed.
So, should we get to some news?
Yes, we shall go to some news.
Let's get to some news. Moj, kick it off.
Ohio's anti-abortion troll farm is big mad that the state won't prosecute Hey Jane, a telehealth abortion provider, because they, wait for it, aren't doing anything wrong. The statutes they cited in their suit were ruled unenforceable last year, but why not just keep on keeping on with trying to punish us? Because hobbies are for pussies, am I right?
You are right. And lawmakers in Cheyenne have put the Y in Wyoming as they overrode the governor's veto and are forcing any medication abortion patient to have a medically unnecessary transvaginal ultrasound before they can get their pills.
These factual Frankensteins have now legislated that every patient should hear the heartbeat of their baby before they receive care. Well, let's look at this. If you have your abortion before 7 weeks, there is not a heartbeat, so it's forced penetration, also known as
Grape.
Yeah.
And even if we play their game, if you want to call it a baby and the state is inserting a camera and is filming all of its little nakedness, isn't that technically child porn? I mean, I'm just going by your logic, Wyoming.
Listen, when you're right, you're right. And speaking of politicians who love to sing in A minor key, nary one day after co-sponsoring a bill that would designate shit-talking Trump as a mental illness, Minnesota State Senator Justin Eichhorn was arrested for soliciting a 16-year-old for sex and is looking at being expelled from his seat by his fellow Republicans.
A preliminary investigation done by our FBK research team uncovered that Eichhorn is not trans, has never been a drag queen, and just seems to be a red-blooded MAGA enthusiast marauding for teen sex. The second one busted this week.
Ew.
And that was your steaming news dump. Okay, so before we get to the stories we're going to dig deeper on, we have some business to take care of.
Sure do. South Carolina has us heading to the Supreme Court again April 2nd. It seems it's not enough to institute a total abortion ban and impose death penalty if you have abortion in the state. Nope, that's not enough.
Nope, that is not enough. In this case, called Medina v. Planned Parenthood, basically, the state of South Carolina doesn't want Medicaid dollars to go to somebody who chooses Planned Parenthood as their health care provider. And not for abortion, because Planned Parenthood doesn't do abortions in South Carolina at Planned Parenthood. They don't want the Medicaid dollars to go to Planned Parenthood if you want to get a pap smear or wellness visits or any other thing. They're basically just trying to set up any clinic that provides abortion with not being able to use Medicaid dollars so that they can try to destroy any of these clinics who get government funding to do wellness visits. So we're going to be there. We're going to be cheering on Planned Parenthood and cheering against South Carolina. And we would love for you to come and join us. We are getting so many volunteers to be with us on the steps of SCOTUS. It's so fun. We have great signs. We have great chants. We troll the anti-abortion people. We try to chant them and silence them. It is a really good show of force, and we want you to come.
And you can join us. You just fill out the form in the show notes. You can connect with us and we will get you all the deets of how you can be there in the streets. And it's going to be a joyful noise. And we are fighting for our rights because we got to. And that's April 2nd. And we hope to see you. But wait, there's more.
Moji and I are teaming up with the Boom Lawyered podcast, Imani Gandhi and Jess Pieklo, to do a two-headed Hydra podcast live at the Black Cat. It is going to be so much fun. We're going to do all the analysis of the Supreme Court case and then bring you sort of the landscape of where we're at in our reproductive lives. And we're going to drag the assholes for filth. We're going to have a lot of laughs and you're going to learn a lot of stuff and learn how to fight back. And we are so excited because we love those two.
They are so smart. They are so funny. They are so great. They are exactly, if you're not listening to their podcasts, I don't know how you're not listening to the podcasts.
Get to that podcast.
And together, the four of us, it's going to be the best thing you could do on April 3rd.
That's right. April 3rd at the Black Cat. Tickets are in our show notes. They're also at aafront.org/tickets.
All right. So now let's get to the stories we want to break down further, Liz.
Okay. So the big story this week is, I'm sure you've heard it. It's the first charges brought against a physician since the fall of Roe. A midwife / Peruvian OBGYN and two of her staff have been targeted by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and are being charged with providing pills used in medication abortion. It's a friggin' mess. The whole thing is super sketch.
Absolutely a mess. And I feel like Ken Paxton is always so sketch. And we know he hates abortion. He hates brown people. It seems like this clinic in particular, we're serving Latina people. So this is super sketch. Right now, the reporting is really kind of thin. It's just sort of like these broad terms are thrown out and it's like illegal abortionists, immigration people. I'm not clear exactly what happened here, even reading through the story several times, Liz. It seems like they just decided to follow this clinic based on a tip that seems a little sketch. What do you think?
Well, it feels like, an anonymous person reported that this clinic was doing abortions for extra money. A bunch of people they interviewed were like, she's Catholic. That seems weird. All I know is that anything that comes out of Ken Paxton's office should be suspect. They've chased down trans families. They've chased down immigrants. This is the guy that wanted to prosecute people and put up wild wire barriers in the Rio Grande so that immigrants trying to come here would die if they were crossing in the river. Like, this is a terrible person who's also teamed up with Jonathan Mitchell, who is the author of that bounty hunting bill in Texas, to try to solicit men who feel aggrieved because their partners had abortions to try to punish the people who helped them and the people who've had abortions. So all Ken Paxton does is try to get back at people, especially brown people, immigrants, and people who have capacity for pregnancy. So I feel like I trust nothing. I feel like I don't know what's happening in this case, but I do know that these people were arrested over 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
And then they just send out the press release now. And Jessica Valenti, activists in Texas, and Moji and I, who've been doing the research, have all kind of looked at this as a nefarious hiding thing. When you do a shiny object, look over here.
Sleight of hand, yes.
Yes, because at the same time that this all of a sudden captured all the news, Texas dropped an incredible, like, this probably is the wrong way to say it, but the mother of all abortion bans. And I think they want that to go under the radar, and they wanted to uplift this to sort of suck the air out of them dropping this horrible, terrible, very bad law.
And it is working because you don't hear about this horrible, terrible, awful law, but you hear all of this. You Google Texas and abortion, and all you hear about is these 3 people who may or may not have been providing abortions in Texas. And you hear nothing about this bill that dropped on Friday. And can we get into what's in this bill, Liz?
It is basically some kind of weird laid out playbook of trying to ban anything that has to do with abortion from the internet.
Yep.
Let's just break it down and then talk about who we're talking about it affects and how it affects us.
Well, one of them is that it establishes penalties for ordering abortion pills online and for the nonprofit funds that help them travel out of state for care. So if you are paying attention, you know abortion does not exist as a right in Texas, but places that were abortion funds still do help Texans get out of Texas to get the care that they need. And of course, all these organizations like Aid Access, Hey Jane, will send abortion pills to Texans who require them and pay for them.
That's right. And then if you're a person who helps people get care, like a practical support fund that helps with travel and lodging and childcare, or you're an organization that helps fund your abortion anywhere, not just in Texas, but helping Texans, you would be penalized from that.
So this goes after the websites that share information about how pills work. And this is organizations like Plan C Pills that don't even dispense pills. They just tell you how they work and where you might be able to find them. And it includes us, our website, the AAF website. We have our Charlie chatbot that we've talked about. We wouldn't be allowed to operate in Texas.
And then you're like, how can they do that? Well, because they also want to target tech companies that allow abortion to exist on their platforms. So that can mean Squarespace, WordPress, the people who allow websites to be created. That can mean Canva if you're creating pro-abortion or actively promoting abortion in graphic design. That can mean social channels like IG and TikTok that allow organizations to post about a wide range of abortion care. And we all know that we have had, we're called Abortion Access Front, we can't even take out ads on those platforms because we have abortion in the name. We have our content suppressed a lot of times because it's about abortion. So they're already doing it. If they get another massive lawsuit and this passes, they're just going to say, fuck it. Like, we don't want the headache. We're just not going to let you be on that platform. And that part really feels chilling.
It also gives new power to the state attorney general, and that is Ken Paxton. To prosecute abortion providers. And there is no abortion in Texas. So this is a broad power. Like, who's he going to prosecute? They're moving outside of state lines with this.
Well, also, there's no internet in Texas and then internet for the rest of us. I mean, this is the whole thing with, I don't know how you regulate the internet. It's certainly going to get challenged in court, but they also want to establish their own Texas version of the Comstock Act, right? Where you can't mail abortion pills throughout the state of Texas or into the state of Texas. I don't know how that's going to work. So is that for pharmacies, doctors, nonprofits? Again, who does this affect? So many people. But then it always involves getting to transitioning our agency and transitioning us into property.
Yep. It basically empowers the biological father of the unborn child, which
That language.
It basically takes the power from the person who is carrying a pregnancy out of their hand and puts it into a person who they might have just had sex with. Once or
Totally.
twice.
Creating ownership status always. And then also in tandem with that, they create civil liability so that said father of the unborn can charge the person who had the abortion with wrongful death of an unborn child in a civil suit.
And this led you and I to talk about, wait, how do you have wrongful death in a civil suit? And it really led me down a path because I remembered that when OJ was acquitted for killing Nicole Brown Simpson, her family went after him in a civil suit. So wrongful death in a death apparently is a thing. And it still makes no sense, but it essentially is a lawsuit or some sort of legal action filed by the family or estate of a deceased person against a party deemed responsible for the death. And it seeks compensation for damages, usually money. So basically, this is a way to sue a pregnant person for having an abortion.
It just goes on, y'all. I mean, and the fact that this is not all over the news makes me so mad. It also is going to target financial institutions. So if you lend somebody money on Venmo or Zelle or PayPal, or any of the people take that money, those people can get also targeted. And so abortion funds and providers, you couldn't give your friend money over Venmo if they needed to borrow money for an abortion. You could be held accountable, covering the cost of all of it. So
if it sounds like absurd and unheard of, we see sex workers talk all the time about their ability to collect funds through these financial institutions being, they'll just take their money. They won't give them money. They'll be pushed off of a platform. So it is already happening with marginalized people, and it could happen to basically people with the capacity with pregnancy and the people who help them, because we are also marginalized people.
Yeah, and it's all going to get challenged. It's going to pass. It's going to get signed. And their plan is to have it go into effect September 1st. It's going to go through lawsuits. I would normally say this is so wholly unconstitutional that there's no way this is ever going to pass muster anywhere. But I don't know anymore. I can't make those promises anymore. So the best thing that you can do right now as a call to action is, for God's sake, I don't care if your representative in Texas is one of the shitbag authors of this, call them.
Or Briscoe Kane.
Call them and tell them to vote no on SB 2880, and then to vote yes. There's another bill that sort of gives clarity around access to abortion care so that doctors won't be criminalized and people who are helping people won't be criminalized. So you vote yes in that SB 31. We'll put that in the show notes, and you can find your state rep at wrm.capital.texas.gov/home. And of course, we'll put that in the show notes, but call them and let them know, because guess what? This shit it's your life. And they need to hear that their jobs in these Texas State House will not stand, and you won't vote for them if they vote for this. So get on that.
Get on it. And if you think it can happen, remember SB 8 went into effect in Texas months before Roe was overturned. So bad things happen in Texas, but there are other bright lights of abortion hope happening in this country, Liz.
Yeah, that's true. And, many states are saying, fuck it, we're going to expand things. You look at Michigan, you look at Minnesota, you look at Illinois. And this week we have Colorado and Maryland.
Oh my gosh. Colorado and Maryland this week really have announced the best. So in November, Colorado voters approved a ballot amendment that repealed the ban on using public funds for abortion. We talked about it on this podcast. And that opened the door for state employees and people enrolled in state health plans to basically have abortion care covered. So not only is that great news in terms of equity, but it also is projected this week that will save the state lots of money once it's implemented in 2026.
What are they going to do then? That's going to be just really interesting to see. And then this week in Maryland, legislators passed a bill that will allow the state to use a $25 million pot of money.
Feels like so much money.
I know, to help low-income folks pay for abortion care in their state. And the money comes from $1 a month surcharge on healthcare plans purchased through the state's public health exchange. Insurance companies have been collecting and holding on to this money for 15 years, which is why it's so huge. But the caveat is that it can only be spent on abortion services, not any other expenses.
That doesn't sound like a bad thing to me. I say a win is a win.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I wish it paid for travel and childcare and help people like in the totality of their experience. But look, if it's going to pay for somebody's care, you're right. I'll take it as a win, as a win. Anyway.
Yeah, and all of this just basically points to the deep popularity of abortion and all the ways that local governments can mobilize, unlike Texas, to make life a little easier and more attractive for voters to live there.
Totally. And not only is it good policy, a new study came out just this week from the Institute for Women's Policy Research that shows people of reproductive age are centering reproductive access when they're making huge life decisions, like moving to another state, making sure it has solid abortion protections, and only taking jobs with comprehensive reproductive health care plans. So we're so excited to have as our first guest on the show, President and CEO of the IWPR, who co-authored this study, Dr. Jamila Taylor. Hello, Dr. Taylor.
Hello.
Hello. How are you all?
I mean, isn't that the question that really no one can answer?
I know. It feels like everything is on fire right now.
It does feel like everything's on fire. We feel so lucky to talk to you today because, we've been covering forever just like med students making choices around where they're going to go and where they're going to land, and stories coming out of states actually expanding abortion access. And so it was really great that we could talk to you about this study and what it means for folks and where they choose to work and what they demand of their employers. But before we get to that, for folks that don't know about your wonderful work, we thought it might be a really good idea to just lay out the work that y'all do at Institute for Women's Policy Research.
Absolutely. And, want to start off by welcoming your listeners and thank you all so much for having me as part of the pod today. So IWPR is a national leading think tank that focuses on advancing gender equity for all women. And we do this in a multitude of ways. On one hand, we conduct rigorous research on a broad range of issues that impact women's lives. And we do that in an intersectional approach, looking at things like, gender, race, class, sexual orientation, and how these things intersect to create economic opportunities, particularly for women and families. And then we also combine this research, in a multitude of methods, whether it's qualitative research or quantitative research. So really coupling numbers and stories to paint a picture of women's experiences in this country. And we've been around for almost 40 years. So we have a lot of skin in the game when it comes to looking at these issues and really thinking critically about what matters to women and families in this country.
I think sometimes regular folks who live in the world, they hear about policy research and they hear about think tanks. And I think that one of the questions I get asked a lot, and quite frankly, sometimes I don't know the answer, so hopefully you're going to give it to me, is when these incredibly important research studies are done, how in turn is it applied? What does it mean for practical folks?
Yeah, I think in one way, it is applied for us or as think tanks, and I've worked for think tanks for a number of years now, not to date myself, but this, we sort of pride ourselves in also informing how decisions are made in this country, particularly when it comes to public policy issues. And so, as an example, we've done a lot of research around ensuring, equal pay for women, access to paid leave, conducting research on the impact of the maternal health crisis, particularly centering Black women. And part of what we're going to talk about today is also looking at the impact of abortion restrictions on women's lives, particularly coming out of the horrific Dobbs decision. And so that's how we apply the research. And again, we're talking to decision makers really across the government, but also other advocates, activists who are thinking about how to organize and really use this research to inform how we're moving forward as a country on these really key issues.
Yeah, it's so important because for a podcast like ours, sometimes we can take this sometimes these studies are super dense and they have all this stuff. For us to be able to lay it out in bite-sized hunks and take some of the top lines and let people know that we aren't just anecdotally having our hair on fire. It's actually been researched. So our hair is actually on fire with purpose.
Okay, so the IWPR was founded in 1987, which really has us asking what kind of research was being done about how public policy affects women before then?
Well, absolutely. And, I want to start off by sending a huge shout out to our founder, Dr. Heidi Hartman, who really started this organization out of need, right? There was a lack of feminist economists engaging on these issues from a national sphere. And there was also a lack of policy solutions at the time that were really centered and driven by women. And so, Heidi really set out to start an organization that was one, centering women's experiences, but also positioning women as leaders when it comes to, really developing clear policy solutions around these key issues that were impacting women's lives and, sort of being the engineers behind, these research designs, again, that will tell the true story in terms of, the challenges that women were facing. And so I think we pride ourselves in doing that day-to-day work, but also as nurturers of female researchers and policymakers in all fields. We are one of the largest, longest standing women focused, policy oriented nonprofits in the country. And so, as a Black woman, running this organization, and it was founded by a white woman, Heidi Hartman, as I mentioned, there weren't a lot of women doing this work.
Yeah.
And also as someone who sort of looked at the feminist movement historically, you definitely saw like the reproductive rights movement around abortion rights and some of these core issues being driven by white women. And there was an effort to sort of bring women of color in more. But this very, niche area around like feminist economists, thinking about things like paid leave, access to quality childcare, and these issues, there weren't a lot of organizations doing that work. And so I do think we really helped to set the stage when it comes to doing this work.
Well, which brings us to this most recent study that y'all did, which is where are we at after these abortion bans? And I think so often we've all heard so many men in the power structure saying things like, people care more about economic issues than they do reproductive issues, as though they are separate.
Right.
And so that just fundamental place that we sort of still find ourselves in with so many people who are in charge is wild. And so let's talk about this study. You talked to 10,000 people about how abortion bans and reproductive health care coverage broadly play a role in where folks choose to live and how they choose an employer. So I was really curious when Moji and I were reading, we really wanted to know kind of what specific demographics you surveyed, age range, education, current job status, things like that. And what were some of the key findings that you think are top lines that people really need to know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to preface this by saying, too, I mean, I think coming out of the Dobbs decision, here we are, a few years out, and we are just now able to collect data on what the impact has been. And so that's why I think this report and this research continues to make waves, because we are now able to speak to what the impact has been, particularly from an economic perspective. So thank you so much, Liz, for setting us up. So basically, we looked at state level data. We conducted a public opinion survey of 10,000 adults from across the country. And data was broken out by standard demographics. So looking at sex, age, parental status. And we also wanted to get a sense of, whether respondents plan to have children in the next decade, and what the implications were for businesses and employers. And so I think some of the top lines here is that, one, we continue to see that abortion bans are hugely unpopular, even in states with abortion bans. We know that 1 in 5 people planning to have kids in the next 10 years has moved or knows someone who has moved due to abortion restrictions. We also know that workers want reproductive health benefits, right? So 57% of future parents want jobs with reproductive health care benefits. And in that, we also talk to business leaders as a part of this research project. And they have responded in this moment by, having more flexible work environments, ensuring better reproductive healthcare benefits, even giving staff the opportunity to leverage stipends to be able to move and travel. So all of these things are important when it comes to responding to the needs of the workforce in these areas, but also these employers have seen the value, not only in their staff, but also the value of ensuring that, women and families have access to the healthcare that they need, particularly reproductive care and abortion care. And then I'll also say, too, another piece that I really loved about this is the fact that employees also want to see their employers be loud and proud about their support of, getting rid of abortion restrictions. I think that is amazing. I think giving businesses the license to sort of be upfront about the fact that we need, to be honest, a nationally protected right to abortion care was also something that was really central to this process. So really a lot of goodies in this report. I know I'm biased because, IWPR did this work, but I also want to take a step back too and acknowledge our partners, the Center for Reproductive Rights. We also partnered with Morning Consult, to conduct the survey.
Well, and navigating your work, right, in 2025, it just seems like we're all living in a time we've never lived in before, right? I mean, it's like, welcome to the DEI podcast. Like everything, every word we ever say, like it is banned in any federal thing, it feels like. And then when you look at, we're so worried about the important work that folks like you do, because we have elected officials, giant elected officials like Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, our president, like people like Pete Hegseth running the Department of Defense, who literally do not believe that women or people of color or trans people should even be in the public square. So how does that work when you are doing research on trying to eliminate barriers for the full participation of these communities in society when people are trying to erase us completely?
I will say that, IWPR will continue to do the great work that it has done for, almost 4 decades and focus on pursuing evidence-based research that is clear and honest about, sort of the impact of any efforts to roll back, whether it's DEI, economic advancements for women, families, and other people at the margins, and how these things are going to impact our economy as a whole. This report on the impact of these abortion bans on the economy, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We are going to continue to drive, really rigorous research to add to this national dialogue when it comes to these core issues. And I think it's even more important now than ever to really be out there and be upfront about what the impact of, these draconian policy changes and decisions are going to be, especially when it comes to women and families. And so we're going to continue to fight and call on others to join us in this. And look, I recognize, we're not an activist organization, but we are certainly going to be working to ensure that our research and data get into the right hands, those that are on the front lines, marching, protesting, advocating, everything from workers' rights to, ensuring that employers, put their money where their mouth is in terms of supporting their employees on these core issues, living their values. We're going to continue to inform the dialogue around these issues and make sure that our research gets into the right hands.
So glad that you said that. And I'm so glad that you, continue to center the people at the margins, people who will truly be impacted by this, which is all women and intersectional groups of people with capacity for pregnancy. Can you tell me what you feel is hopeful at this moment? What gives you hope and what you think we should do, us as listeners, our listeners, us as activists, with this research that you are providing for us and will continue to work on?
I think, It's hard not to doom scroll these days. On one hand, you don't want to get drawn in, but then, as an organization that focuses on evidence-based research and developing policy solutions, we do have to pay attention. But the thing that I have been really encouraged about is just, I think, the innovation around resisting. I think it's different this time around. People are really being creative about how they're resisting, how the courts are being leveraged in this moment in order to beat back, some of the harmful decisions that are coming out of this administration. Even this project, for this research around abortion-related restrictions and the business community. I mean, getting our research into the hands of the business community. Being at South by Southwest, this was the first time that, our organization had been there. And there's a large business community that's a part of South by Southwest. So we were able to get this research hot off of the press, in front of them. And I continue to be inundated with messages and opportunities to connect with business leaders when it comes to this research and how there may be other opportunities down the line to further study what the impact of these restrictions have been in ways that can really inform the trajectory of abortion rights moving forward. Like we're stronger together in an environment where there's so much effort around causing division in this country where we can push back against that and lock arms and be together and be unified on these core values in our country. I think that's the best thing that we can do moving forward.
It's so crucial. And we're so thankful to have people doing this work so that we can bring it to folks and so that we can help rally folks. And also, it's really nice to be able to not just be anecdotal, but really have evidence-based information to say, look, businesses, people want this. This is a thing that people are making decisions. And when 1 in 5 people are saying, I will not work for you or I will not live in this state because of these abortion bans, like that's a really big deal, to be thinking about those kind of things or them or they know someone, and I think we couldn't do our work without you. And I always think that researchers are the unsung heroes.
Yes.
And sometimes the people who are giving the information that you work hard doing get the credit when you all are in the trenches really making it happen. So thank you so much, Dr. Taylor, for doing what you do.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here. And again, thank you for having me. I do want to leave y'all with one more stat.
Yes, go for it. We love stats.
In additional research that IWPR has done, we know that these abortion-related restrictions cost the U.S. economy over $60 billion annually.
Take that in, Doge.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Exactly.
Seems you're looking in all the wrong places.
Right. Exactly. So thank you all so much for having me.
Dr. Taylor, can you, before you go, tell people where they can find IWPR to learn more about what you do and follow your work?
Absolutely. So folks can find us at iwpr.org. And there, not only can you find out more information about the organization, but it also includes a plethora of our research papers, reports, including the report that we centered today. So please look out there and find all the information you need to advance gender equity.
You also have a really robust Instagram. And so we're going to make sure that we drop the link in there so people can follow you.
Yes, absolutely. Join us on Instagram.
Dr. Taylor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. And again, to learn about IWPR's work, you can visit iwpr.org.
As always, these stories will be in the show notes, and you can find the best, most up-to-the-minute resources on accessing abortion care and funding your care on our website, aafront.org. Our Charlie chatbot on the bottom right will walk anyone, anywhere in the country through their options and resources for abortion. And we do this show because this info is not given enough attention in the media. So help us spread the word and show us some love by liking, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating. Every little bit helps us reach more listeners.
It is true. And who knows how long we can even be on the air.
Fingers crossed.
But for now, we are here. We are so grateful to you as listeners. And we couldn't do any of this work without the generous support of our fake sponsors. So Moji, who's keeping the lights on this week?
Well, your Ben Shapiros and your Charlie Kirks are making millions online, grinding away at abortion access and stripping down reproductive rights.
Their fans pay big money to get off watching them fuck women over again and again and again. But why should professionals be the only ones making all that cash?
You too can get in on that sweet, sweet misogyny money today by starting your very own OnlyBans page. OnlyBans, the platform buy-in for anti-abortion content creators.
No budget? No problem. All you need in your OnlyBans page is a webcam, some meat sweats, and a carnal thirst for a world where abortion bans put women back on their backs and in your control.
Choose a catchy title like Secret Agent Ban or The Ku Klux Ban, and you'll get every suffer bitch subredditor literally throwing money at you.
We all know that men who love men who hate abortion is the fastest growing industry in America, and OnlyBans is your opportunity to get in on the ground floor.
OnlyBans, the unporn hub.
Oh, the worst.
Oh my gosh, I forgot how terrible our sponsors can get sometimes, Liz.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
We've had some really kick-ass ones recently, and we're back to the bullshit.
Back to the bullshit. Let's get to some good shit with our next guest.
She's a talented visual artist, amazingly skilled clothing designer, comedian, potential guru, and now published author. Basically, she's a multi-hyphenate, multidisciplinary artist extraordinaire and overall creative genius. Here to talk about her remaining years, please welcome Jean Grae. Hi, Jean.
Hey, Jean.
Hi. That was so much. I was like, is that? I was like, that's a lot. I'm exhausted.
Oh my God. This week, I went to your New York City launch party, and that was really an understatement. That party, incredible. It had everything. It had elaborate outfits. It had eulogies. It had baguettes. It had a coffin. The vibes were immaculate. So how did you decide that a test funeral is actually the best way to celebrate?
I think I've known that a test funeral is the best way to celebrate since I was a kid. I was very rarely thinking of like what my dream wedding would be, but I did very much think about like what my dream funeral would be. And as I got older and I realized, I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one who like has these ideas of mortality salience being okay. It's just that general culture, general Western culture especially, likes to make you feel really fucking weird if you're talking about yourself dying, which is weird because we are going to die. All of
Every
us
single one of us.
Yes.
That's the deal.
We may not become billionaires, but we're definitely going to die.
It's the most inevitable thing that connects us all. The one thing that we're all going to do is die. So yes, I would like to plan that out a little bit. I like a fucking plan. And I don't trust people.
I also like that you can give notes. You're like, okay, this was the trial run, right? So in your eulogy, I need more of this and less of this. Just remember that for next time.
I just want to say, Jean was actually heckling from the sidelines.
The idea is in the book. I'm like, oh, and everybody be clear, this was a test of the test just to see how that would go. Because there still was stuff I'm like, this is not right, but it's too late now. Let's just go ahead. I was like, it was Joelle, Nicole Johnson, who was like, will you be on stage? I was like, I will be directly behind you, just out of shot of the audience to make sure. Yes. And she was like, I wouldn't have it loudly.
Oh my God. This audience is very familiar with Joelle because she's frequent on the podcast. She's also, if you're going to have a board, we have to have a board because we're a nonprofit. She's a board member. And a board member who looks good in tulle is crucial to any board.
Yes.
Men,
Not fiduciary responsibility, just look good in tulle.
this is part of the problem with men. They don't have anyone on the board with tulle. They don't have
Ever.
anyone who can do things well.
No.
That's why they fail. And that's why they're angry. There's no tool. There's not enough tool.
And that's why we don't have any of them on our board.
Exactly. Now, see, I'm not a person who likes tool, but I know you have to have a motherfucker who loves tool around you.
Yeah. All the time. It's
Mhm.
100% true.
So, Jean, because you are celebrating your remaining years
Yes.
by leaning into the trappings of funerality, I love that we're also taking your book title and just using it in a sentence casually. Liz and I wanted to talk about this trend that we've stumbled upon where like mostly Black and Latino people are embalmed upright in lifelike poses like their actual funeral. I mean, there's this one guy,
Yes.
he was in the club and he had club lighting, champagne, one dude in a Celtic jersey holding his Xbox controller, like insane. All right, so you I've already been to
Mhm.
one of your test funeral ideas.
Yes.
What does this comfort with death that you have actually mean? And what would your setup be at your funeral?
One thing, I know they have to nail the feet into the ground. And that's the
Do
only
they?
thing I don't want done. Not because I
Oh.
think I'm going to feel it in any way, just because it's too close to Christianity for me. And I don't want anyone to get the wrong
fair.
idea.
Mhm.
I'm like, no, no, no. Just
Mhm.
no stigmata for this motherfucker, not in death. I don't care. Immediately, the answer is I would like to be, and I talk about this in a book that I saw in a movie. There was a dark skeletal figure that came out of the catacombs in a cloak. And I was like, that's me. That's me. Because I want to be in the corner of a dark bar, like so dark that you have to take out your phone to
Mhm.
read and you get annoyed. I like a dark bar. I want 2 martinis. I want you can make French fries with like resin on them. I need a Caesar salad over there. You can make sure there's fixative on it and it won't go bad. And I want to, out of spite, have a cigarette to my lips that is constantly pumping out smoke,
Yes.
actual cigarette smoke, so everyone gets mad. And I need it to be in the lobby bar of the Chelsea Hotel just to remind them that I was there fucking first. So sort of a fuck you to gentrification with my cigarette and my martinis.
I love it. What are you wearing? What's the outfit?
Black cloak.
Okay, the black cloak.
Okay.
Black cloak,
Okay.
Takuma pants, Margiela tabbies.
Why would they ruin Margiela tabbies by stigmatizing them to the ground? You can't do that to the tabbies.
Because you can't even, because you would go right through the toe. There's a hole right there. You can't do that.
You can't do it.
You know, you bring up the Chelsea Hotel because you were there first. And it's in your book. And I think we should talk a little bit about that because for those people who think they know New York, maybe the youngs, maybe the peeps,
The youngs,
the youngs,
the transplants,
The upstarts.
yeah, the upstarts, those who think Chelsea is about, edible arrangements and other things. You grew up in the 70s, 80s, and part of the 90s at the
Yes.
Chelsea Hotel. And in a New York that was, for me, like romanticized, this is the New York that I wish I was in. And I've seen you joke that you could have been the one that murdered Nancy Spungen, even though you were a toddler. And I believe that's also true. I think you were born with opposable thumbs. I think shit was working for you in a way that it wasn't working for everybody else. But so what I want to know is, being that your normal was New York during that time, talk about what your normal was that would make, let's say, a reader of your book who lives in Topeka be like, that isn't my lived experience.
I think it's always interesting when I talk to a lot of my friends or people I've dated, ex-husbands. I love that I have a plural on that.
Yeah.
When they're like, what were you doing when you were 12 or when you were young? And they're like, oh, we were like playing by the creek. And I'm like, by the fucking creek? What does that even mean? It just things that I saw in movies, or even like 4 kids like riding their bike and then they got to dump them outside and then the street lights come on. Like we just didn't have any of that. New York continues to be a very different animal. But then there was a level of danger. Kids were on milk cartons. There was a lot of I don't think they were going to kidnap me because, but it was the normal.
Yeah.
And we didn't feel like it was outrageous or dangerous. And I don't want to play so hard the other way that you're like, it was unlivable. It was an unlivable situation. Like, no, it was normal and of the time. And we were a community.
Yeah.
The thing that I think about New York in that time and that New York isn't right now is that it's filled right now with people who are coming from other places, which is fine, but they are not interacting with the community and they are taking things and not giving back and kind of leaving things as a strip mall. And although it was dangerous and crazy, you didn't need a note to go to the store to buy cigarettes. They were just going to give you the cigarettes. I don't know why they were letting us into clubs when we were 12, because I still look young and I look like I was like 6 years old. I don't know why they let us buy malt liquor at the stores, but they did. But we were a community and that has really changed.
Yeah.
So you weren't, that danger was different because you knew that someone was always looking out for you. And I think there is a tie to maybe someone in Topeka when you can talk about your neighborhood in that way, but they wouldn't expect that from New York of that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have survived well. But someone would still make sure that you didn't fucking get kidnapped because you knew everyone on the block.
And for those of you who don't have context to Chelsea and the Chelsea Hotel, it's also across the street from the YMCA of the song.
YMCA.
Yes.
The YMCA, which is very different.
Yes.
All right. So last time you were here, you said, writing this book will be a cakewalk, a breeze, a walk in the park. So can you just tell us a little bit, how'd that breezy cakewalk in the park go for you?
It was so easy. It took 3 days, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I said, I was like, it's great. It's going easy. It's just a breeze. And then even my publishers were like, it's 18 months. And I'm like, I'll do it in 6. And then I was like, and then 2.5 years later, I hadn't anticipated all the life that would be lifing. It was far less of the book being an issue than the book that I was writing about was happening in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been adamant about being responsible enough to take some time away from the experience when you're writing it. Whether that was in song, I'm like, if this was a relationship, I don't want to make a song about it. When I was younger, I did. I would make the song directly. I was like, that is very angry and it's not accurate. And I should have sat with my feelings. And I wanted to be responsible as I got more responsible with music when I got older, that a thing happens and you don't just react and you don't just write that, because this is going to be a snapshot of how you dealt with things in the future and you need it to be correct. So it was more about being responsible while going through it in real time and then taking the time to sit with it. And then for me, getting over the guilt that I didn't deliver it in the time I said I was going to.
Yeah.
And then learning from other authors, they were like, what are you talking about? I took 11 years to write another book. They were like, it's not like music.
No.
It's okay.
Yes. I know. And they always, same with me. I took 3 years. It was supposed to be 18 months. I was like, you know what? Because I think, and I'm curious to see if this happened to you, because it was my experience and it's been the experience of other folks that I've talked to who've written memoirs, is where you kind of first beat out the stories that you think are valuable. And then through the course of writing that story, the memories that come through about that change the entire what you want to tell about that story. It's like, oh, that's not the story. There's this piece within the story that I really want to tell. Did you have that experience?
Those happened. And then additionally, like when I pitched the book, I was like, oh, this is going to be about like the woman that I became. And during the course of the story, I was like, I'm not even a woman anymore. What are we? Oh no.
There is very much an embracing the unfinishedness.
Yeah.
I think in this book that I think is really, really like seductive. And
yeah.
But I also feel like looking at a lot of your work, right? You did when you were here last time, you were talking about, you were doing these affirmations, you had a church, like all of this, almost trying to become a guru for those of us who don't actually want a guru.
I think it's all the same thing. There is my artwork that I make, like the visual art. I'm always adamant that it goes to the right home. I don't care who can pay less or pay more or whatever for it. And the person, it always turns out to be the right person. And it always turns out that it's something along their journey, along their time. So I have come to accept that no matter what it is that I do, the most important thing is being there for each other in the moment, for people who are like, I did not ask for this.
Yes.
And I'm also like, listen, that's good because I didn't ask for this either. I didn't want this. I want to relax. The fuck am I out here?
Oh my gosh. At your launch, you said, I did not ask for this at least a dozen times. And every time, you're right, no one asked for this. But you know what? Thank you for the baguette.
My editor and very longtime friend, Nigeli, I told her today, and I was like, I didn't know if you were intentionally doing this. Like, it was a beautiful moment. But we intentionally, as a community, all in one space, broke literal bread together. I was like, I don't know if you meant it like that, but that is something that's so important to me. Like, we sat down and had a meal.
Yeah, I love that. So, as Moji said, we casually just talk about my remaining years as though it's the title of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And it just begs the question, are you making plans for your remaining years? What's the journey?
It's very different than it used to be. And I was a person who had very exact plans for points in life and like hitting those years and achieving those goals. And during the course of writing this book, like I think I was on my way to doing that, I started to let go of those kinds of expectations and become less ambitious about success in that way, like success with capitalism and success in like the hustle and grind culture. It's not healthy. My body can't do it. So in my remaining years plans have like a big umbrella, which is I want to be fabulous and have a good time with my friends and make beautiful things. And anything that falls under that is fantastic. And anything that falls outside of that, I don't want to fucking do it.
I love that.
And that's the easiest point I've come to in life, to be like, just make it broad.
Yeah.
I love this.
It sounds perfect too, because, you talk about shedding people, shedding things. Like that's a big theme for you. And I feel like once you've set this kind of like, here's how I'm checking into whether or not it's meaningful to me, you can shed the right people, you can say no to things easily, and you can create a plan that's always going to fill you up full of good. I love it.
It's world building, the rules of world building. Even when you're writing, when you write that sort of Bible, like you don't have to go back and ask what the characters are doing or wonder if it's wrong. Like you already have the path, and so the rest of it writes itself.
Jean, we cannot wait to have you come back and tell us more about how this path evolves in your remaining years. In the interim, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
It's wherever books are being booked. Please also go out and support your local independent bookstores if you can. That is always the first option for me and for you, and should be, because we want to destroy our overlords and murder them. And yes, I did say that out loud. That's fine and great, and you should too. You can also find the audiobook, which I really strongly, even if you get the book, get the audiobook. I narrated it. I did the original music for it. It's very sound immersive. It's wonderfully produced. Social media wise, you can stalk me on Instagram if you want. Have I started a TikTok account and been on there lurking quietly for 5 years, and it's been wonderful. And I also have another account, which I'm about to tell people about. Sure. Will it be soon? I don't know.
Okay.
I just followed you on Blue Sky. I don't know how much you're fucking around over there, but I did go.
I randomly post, and then I go in there and I'm like, do I really want to be doing this? And like I said, in my remaining years, am I having a good time with my friends on Blue Sky? I'm fucking not. I'm not, Liz.
Fair.
Yeah.
Were you a Twitter person? Did you like Twitter?
Yes. Heavy.
Yeah, I did too.
I was of the original Twitter people. And it was a great time.
Yeah.
You mean when Erykah Badu was giving birth on Twitter? I remember that.
It was a long time. It was over a decade. That's how I met so many amazing people. Someone asked Hodgman how me and him met, and I was like, Twitter.
Yeah, that's how I met you too.
Yes, it is.
I know. And Blue Sky trying to, but it's kind of like
Feels weird.
Yeah, it's like a halfy.
It feels like a fucked up clone. And you're like, oh, that's not right. That eye is not in the right place.
Wow, you guys, I just want to say, sound like old heads.
Wow.
Old heads.
Yes.
Y'all are
No.
giving old head. And I appreciate it, considering I'm literally the same age.
I'm 97 years old. Look at this.
I know. I have a lot of wisdom. Every time I talk to somebody, I'm like, I've had experiences you'll never have because bad people ruin stuff.
Yeah. And I can find those bad people. So also that's, I guess, where you can find me on Instagram. If you have anyone you need to get rid of, let me know.
Okay. I love that. I think we should leave it on that.
I think it's a great ending. Thank you, Jean.
Jean, you're the best.
Thank you, guys.
I'm so excited for you. Get this book.
Please get it.
Go buy Jean's memoir, In My Remaining Years. And if you're feeling spicy, get her audiobook so you can hear her words come alive.
Liz?
Yes?
That's our show.
It is our show.
Oh my gosh. Listeners, thanks for listening. And thanks again to Dr. Taylor. And be sure to learn about IWPR's work at IWPR.org.
Did we make you smarter, make you laugh today? Show us some love by liking, subscribing, and giving us 5 stars. Plus, stay connected with us on all social media at Abortion Front across all the platforms. With your help, we can get more people to learn about this assault on abortion access.
Looking for where you might fit in to do some abortion activism? We've got a 5-part activist training series, Operation Save Abortion, at operationsaveabortion.com. And while you're there, visit our super cool activist calendar, which is full of local and national actions and educational opportunities.
We've also got a great mutual aid program at Abortion Access Front called Adopt a Clinic, where the public can support independent clinics, abortion funds, clinic escort groups, and patients directly by ordering needed items from an organization's wish list.
This week, we're highlighting the Toledo Abortion Center Escorts wish list. Our friends in Ohio need everything from diapers to crayons to sanitary pads. You can show some love to their wish list through the link in our show notes.
And if you want to get even more involved but not sure how, you can always sign up to volunteer at our website, aafront.org, and we'll help you figure it out together.
We are dark next week, preparing for the Ropocalypse at SCOTUS on April 2nd, and our live pod mashup with Boom Lawyered at the Black Cat on April 3rd. So please join us in front of SCOTUS, and you can find the link to sign up in the show notes. And of course, don't forget our show. It's going to be fucking fantastic.
It's going to be fun. We want to see you in DC is the message here. See you in DC. And if you like what you do, you maybe can't come to DC, but you want to support our work, support our Patreon. You'll get great content, get cool merch, and experiences. All pledges support this podcast and all of our activism at Abortion Access Front. You can pledge at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills. FBK is edited by Remy DeTournay and is produced by Jin Moon and Abortion Access Front. Thanks for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.
Feminist Buzzkills, the podcast from Abortion Access Front. New episodes drop Friday. When BS is poppin', we pop off. And if you want to support our podcast and all the work of Abortion Access Front, like, subscribe, and join our Patreon at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills.